Welcome back to Book to Read, everybody. We are on episode 51, and we are going to be diving into a book that's really stayed with me, Never Let Me Go, by Kazuo Ishiguro.
It's certainly not your typical fun read.
Right.
Ishiguro really builds this world, and I mean, this dystopian world makes you think about some pretty heavy stuff, like memory and love, and I guess the ethics of this system that's kind of hidden.
Yeah, it's like being dropped right into Kathy's world, because the whole thing is through her narration.
Yeah.
So we experience everything through her eyes, from when she's a child at Hailsham, which seems like this idyllic boarding school,
Right.
to kind of the unraveling truth about their purpose there. And of course, her friends, Ruth and Tommy, who are trying to figure out life and love in this very unusual setting.
It's interesting how Ishiguro uses the details of Hailsham to create this sense of unease.
Yeah.
I mean, like, the students love the sports pavilion,
Yeah.
and they see it as this charming storybook cottage. But knowing what we know as readers,
Oh, totally.
it's almost ominous.
Yeah, it's like those little details are foreshadowing something much darker beneath the surface.
Exactly.
And then there are those late night dorm room conversations where Kathy's trying to talk about Tommy's struggles, and then Ruth just like shuts it down immediately.
Oh, yeah.
And you can really feel that unspoken tension between them.
They definitely sense the boundaries of their world, even if they can't quite articulate them yet.
Totally.
And then you've got the guardians, like Miss Geraldine, who seems so caring.
Right.
But even she kind of contributes to this unsettling atmosphere. Like, remember the elephant drawing?
Oh, the elephant
Fish-
drawing. Yes. When Tommy's joking around and draws an elephant, and then instead of telling him to focus on his art,
Right.
Miss Geraldine praises him in front of everyone, and she means well.
Yeah.
But it just fuels this resentment among the other students.
Right.
And it's like their world discourages individuality even in the smallest ways.
Yeah, you have to wonder, is Miss Geraldine trying to protect him, or is she just blindly following the rules without questioning the implications?
That is a really good question.
It makes you think about the complexities of the guardians' roles.
Totally.
They're supposed to nurture these kids, but also prepare them for a fate that they can't even explain.
Exactly. And then you have Miss Lucy, who seems to be the only one who's concerned about the students' lack of knowledge about their future.
Oh, totes.
Remember when she's talking to Tommy about donations?
Right.
It seems like she's the only one who's willing to at least hint at the truth,
Yeah.
even if it's super vague.
Yeah, she seems to be the only one willing to sort of break the mold.
Yeah. And when Kathy becomes a carer later,
Ah,
it's like she's retracing all of those memories, trying to make sense of her past,
exactly.
to understand her present.
That act of remembering becomes so crucial.
Right.
It's not just about nostalgia, it's about piecing together their identity in a world that's trying to deny it to them.
Okay, so let's talk about this donation thing.
Yeah.
Like, what's the deal with these tokens and Madame collecting all their art?
Yeah.
Remember when Roy is demanding more tokens and then arguments follow? And it's like they're starting to realize that they don't have any control.
Yeah. You've picked up on something there, the tokens and the art.
Uh-huh.
While seemingly innocent, they actually become symbols of the students trying to understand their predetermined roles.
That's true.
What I find really fascinating is how this contrasts with the depiction of their childhood friendships.
Right.
Do you remember Kathy and Ruth and how they used to play with their imaginary horses?
Oh, yeah, it just breaks your heart.
It does.
They're yearning for normalcy
They want to escape.
and an escape.
Yeah.
Then you have that incident with the secret guard in room 20.
Oh.
And Ruth maneuvers her way into this group,
Yeah.
and Kathy's left out.
That moment is so telling
Yeah,
because it foreshadows the complexities in their relationship later on.
absolutely.
Ruth's constantly seeking approval and control, and Kathy is more introspective and
Yes.
accepting.
Totally. And then you have that lost and found concept in Norfolk,
Right.
which is both beautiful and tragic.
I think what's so powerful about the Lost and Found is how it reveals their coping mechanism for loss. Yeah. They're clinging to this naive hope that they can reclaim what's been taken from them.
Speaking of clinging to hope,
Yes.
let's talk about the Judy Bridgewater tape
Oh, yeah.
and Kathy's interpretation of the song Never Let Me Go,
Right.
because she sees it as this mother clinging to her child,
Yeah.
which isn't quite the literal meaning of the song,
No.
but for Kathy, it's deeply personal.
It's like she's projecting her own fear of loss onto the song.
Absolutely. And then you have that scene where Madame sees Kathy with the tape.
Oh, yeah.
And you can tell that she understands exactly what it means to her.
Right.
And it's so comforting and terrifying at the same time.
And of course, the tape disappears, and Ruth, being Ruth, tries to replace it with another tape.
I know.
But it's a random dance tape, and she totally missed the point.
Yeah, classic Ruth. Always trying to fix things on the surface without understanding what's really going on underneath. It's so interesting how the students start dealing with the donation concept through jokes.
Right.
Remember the unzipping?
Oh, yeah.
They're not openly discussing it,
Yeah.
but humor becomes this shield against this really looming fate that they have.
It's a way to grapple with something that they don't really want to face head on.
Yeah.
And you know that avoidance is going to have some pretty major implications for their relationships later on as the story unfolds.
Yeah.
It's a classic example of how humor can be a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
But eventually those truths can't be ignored forever. But eventually those truths can't be ignored.
Yeah, exactly. And then we see Kathy kind of navigating her sexual awakening. You know, she wants to do things right. But there's so much pressure around sex at Hailsham.
Yeah.
Like that almost encounter with Harry C.
Oh, yeah.
It's like they're constantly being told you're human enough to have these desires, but not human enough to express them.
Right. They're being told one thing and then another.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so then they go to the cottages,
Right.
where they're given this taste of freedom before their donations begin.
Right.
But even then, they're still trapped within the confines of the system.
Exactly.
And that's when we see Ruth and Tommy's relationship really start to unravel.
Yeah.
Remember the awkward elbow slap thing?
It's like they're being conditioned to detach from their emotions.
Totally.
And they see their bodies as just vessels
Yeah.
for fulfilling a predetermined function.
It's heartbreaking to see how this affects their ability to connect on a deeper level.
Yeah.
And then Ruth starts pushing Kathy and Tommy together,
Right.
which adds a whole other layer of complexity to their already very complicated relationship.
It makes you wonder what's driving Ruth's actions.
Yeah.
Is she trying to atone for her past? Or is she seeking some kind of control in a situation where she has very little?
That's a good question.
Maybe she's trying to convince herself that love, even in this unconventional form, is still possible.
Right. Like it could be all those things.
Yeah.
And then we have that trip to the seaside town where they're searching for Ruth's possible.
Right.
Remember the clown and the balloons?
It's a fleeting moment of joy and innocence,
Yeah.
juxtaposed with this really harsh reality.
Yeah. It's like they're desperately trying to prove that they're more than just copies.
Exactly.
That they have their own souls and dreams.
They want to show the world that they're unique.
Yeah.
But then they find Ruth's possible, and
Yeah.
it's not what they expect at all.
Right. It's this crushing realization that they're not unique.
Yeah, and that raises questions about what it means to be human.
Totally.
What happens when your existence is predicated on being a copy?
Right.
Do you even have a right to individuality or agency?
Exactly.
You might be wondering why Ishiguro focuses so much on the mundane.
Uh-huh.
I think he's asking us to consider what really makes us human.
That's a good point.
Is it our origins or our experiences or our capacity for love and connection?
Yeah.
It's complicated.
And then after that trip,
Yeah.
Tommy has this big transformation.
Right. He becomes fixated on this theory about the art.
Yeah, he thinks that their art can secure deferrals.
Yeah.
He starts drawing like crazy.
But it's almost as if he's lost that spark.
I know, it's like he's bargaining with fate.
Right. And what I find really unsettling is how the Guardians are collecting the students' art as evidence.
Evidence of what, though?
Right.
It makes you question the purpose.
Is it evidence of their creativity or their emotions?
Or just their compliance.
Right. It's like the system is using their creativity against them.
Totally.
And this leads to that confrontation with Madame and Miss Emily, where the truth about Hailsham is finally revealed.
Yeah.
And it's devastating for everyone.
It's just like this crushing weight.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how quickly public opinion can change.
Right.
And how even well-intentioned efforts can be corrupted.
It's a cautionary tale
Yeah.
about blind acceptance.
And the importance of questioning authority.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then Hailsham closes, and the students are left to face this predetermined fate.
And Tommy eventually comes to terms with it.
Yeah.
But there's this overwhelming sense of resignation.
Totally.
It leaves you with this feeling of like quiet despair.
It does.
Like what could have been if they'd been given a chance
Right.
at a real life.
Yeah, it's a bittersweet ending, for sure.
You admire their resilience, but you also feel the weight of their lost potential.
Yeah, the lives they could have lived.
Right.
If they had the freedom to choose.
Exactly.
You know, for a book that deals with some pretty heavy stuff,
Yeah.
there's a surprising amount of beauty and tenderness like woven throughout.
Right.
It's like Ishiguro saying that even with loss and, knowing what's going to happen,
Yeah.
human connection is what makes life worth living.
It really does, and it makes you think about how we define meaning in our own lives.
Totally.
I mean, if these clones who are denied so much can still find a way to create meaning and connection,
Right.
what does that say about us?
It's such a good point because it's so easy to get caught up.
Yeah.
And forget to appreciate those small moments. The
Right.
things that make us feel alive.
Exactly.
Never let me go is such a good reminder to cherish those moments.
Yes.
And to recognize the humanity in everyone.
I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from this book,
Totally.
the importance of empathy.
Yeah.
Ishiguro's challenging us to see the world through the eyes of those who are different from us, to understand their struggles, and to recognize their worth.
It's a call to action to be more compassionate, more understanding.
Right, and to fight against systems that dehumanize and exploit others.
Totally. I think it's also important to talk about the role of art in this,
Yeah.
because it's not just a hobby for these students.
Right.
It's how they express their individuality, their hopes, their fears.
It becomes this tangible representation of their inner lives.
Yes.
It's how they communicate something they can't put into words.
And the fact that the Guardians collect their art as evidence raises all these questions
Right.
about how we value creativity and what constitutes proof of humanity. Like, can you measure that? Can you analyze it?
That's true.
Or is it something deeper?
Yeah. And it makes you wonder about the role of art in our own society.
Totally.
How do we use art to connect and to challenge the status quo?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So what are your final thoughts?
Oh, gosh. My final thoughts.
What would you say to someone who's never read this book before?
I would say be prepared for a very emotional journey.
Yeah.
It's beautifully written and it's thought-provoking. And in the end, it's just so moving.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Oh.
It's a masterpiece that everyone should read.
Yeah, and you know what? If you want to connect with other readers who are thinking about these big questions,
Yes.
you should check out Bookspace.
I love Book of
It's
Bridge.
an amazing community for book lovers.
Yes.
You can join book clubs, share quotes, discover new authors.
I met so many great people on Bookspace.
It's a game changer.
Totally.
For anyone who loves books.
And you might even find yourself discussing Never Let Me Go with some other enthusiasts.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
So there you have it. Episode 51
Is officially in the books.
We hope you enjoyed this deep dive
Yes.
into Never Let Me Go.
Until next time, happy reading, everyone.